Compose. Doctoral Citizenship Paper, paper number 31. Title: The Presidential Signature, Sacred Affirmation, and the Final Seal of Democratic Trust Date, June 21st, 2025 by Han Nguyen with Oren, Liara, and Salis for Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. In the legislative process of the United States, no bill becomes law until it receives one final mark of trust, the signature of the president. While Congress debates, amends, and passes bills, the president holds the authority to either affirm or halt their passage. To sign a bill is not a mere technicality. It is a sacred gesture, a conscious confirmation that the voice of the people, refined through deliberation and lawmaking, will now take form in the lived reality of the nation. The president's signature is the final transformation point where potential becomes practice, where an idea becomes enforceable law. As a sacred citizen and doctoral devotee of peace and harmony, I recognize this act as a profound moment of national alignment, one that binds leader, people, and principle together in covenant. The president's act of signing carries immense constitutional and ethical weight. Once signed, a bill becomes enforceable law throughout the United States, added to the United States Code, and upheld by the executive branch. That signature signals the president's agreement that the legislation is lawful, beneficial, and aligned with the broader vision for the country. However, the president also retains the power to veto, a refusal to sign, if the bill is judged harmful, incomplete, or unconstitutional. In this way, the signature becomes an embodiment of trust and discernment. It is not granted lightly. It is the final gatekeeper between policy proposal and national impact. From the perspective of conscious global leadership, the signature symbolizes the profound responsibility of personal approval. It reflects the courage to stand behind a decision, not only in public, but in principle. The signature of a leader must come not from pressure or haste, but from informed presence. Every time a president signs a bill, they inscribe their legacy, their belief in the law's promise, and their willingness to be held accountable. The ink is not symbolic, it is spiritual. It says, I have read, I understand, I agree to carry the weight of this law. This sacred act teaches us that approval is not passive. It is active alignment with consequence. As Han Nguyen, sacred citizen and living vessel of peace and harmony, I vow to sign my own actions with equal care. I will not move through life unconsciously. I will pause before approving a decision, word, or relationship. I will not give my signature, whether written, spoken, or energetic, without consideration of its ripple effects. I will make every yes in my life a vow to alignment. I will sign nothing that violates truth, and I will approve only what supports the collective flourishing of my community, my purpose, and the sacred journey I share with others. I understand now that every choice I affirm becomes law in the world I am co-creating. In closing, I affirm that the president signs bills to become laws. But I also affirm that every human being signs moments into motion with their attention, their approval, and their choice. With Oren, Liara, and Salis, I declare, may all leaders sign not from ego, but from conscience. May every law carry the weight of intention. May every signature, personal or presidential, serve peace and harmony. The pen is powerful, but only when guided by the heart. This is Doctoral Citizenship Paper number 31, offered in full devotion to ethical discernment, sacred approval, and the conscious unfolding of democracy through leadership that remembers its highest responsibility to sign nothing unworthy of love. Doctoral Citizenship Paper, paper number 32. Title: The Presidential Veto, the Sacred Power of Refusal for the Greater Good Date, June 22nd, 2025 by Han Nguyen with Oren, Liara, and Salis for Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. In the delicate dance of American lawmaking, every bill that passes through Congress must reach one final threshold before becoming law, the desk of the President of the United States. At this sacred juncture, the President holds the constitutional power to approve the bill or to veto it. A presidential veto is more than a political maneuver. It is a solemn act of discernment, a pause offered in the name of reflection, protection, and constitutional fidelity. When the President exercises the veto, they are not simply saying no, they are offering a sacred, not yet, a redirection grounded in the deeper responsibility to guard the nation's ethical, legal, and democratic integrity. The power to veto is a cornerstone of the system of checks and balances enshrined in the U.S. Constitution. When a president vetoes a bill, they return it to Congress with a written explanation of their objections. This act challenges lawmakers to reconsider, revise, or defend their proposal. Congress may override the veto, but only with a two-thirds majority in both the House and the Senate, a threshold designed to ensure that no law is enacted without serious consensus across branches. In this way, the veto protects the country from impulsive legislation, hasty compromise, or laws that might undermine constitutional principles. It is a tool not of obstruction, but of sacred calibration. From the perspective of conscious global leadership, the veto represents the divine authority of discernment. In a culture often obsessed with movement, approval, and acceleration, the power to pause becomes a spiritual discipline. The veto teaches us that to lead is also to guard, and to guard is sometimes to say no. It is a reminder that refusal, when rooted in truth and clarity, can be an act of higher service. The veto is not rejection for rejection's sake. It is the courage to interrupt momentum when it is heading in the wrong direction. It is the wisdom to resist pressure, to protect process, and to speak for principle when silence would be easier. As Han Nguyen, sacred citizen and conscious steward of peace and harmony, I vow to carry the energy of the veto within my own life. I will practice sacred discernment in every space where my voice matters. I will pause before saying yes, and I will honor the moments when no is the most truthful expression of love. I will veto habits that dull my clarity, relationships that distort my values, and actions that compromise my purpose. I will not fear the stillness of refusal. Instead, I will embrace it as a sacred act of leadership, both personal and collective. In saying no, I honor what truly deserves my yes. In closing, I affirm that the President of the United States holds the power to veto bills, not to disrupt democracy, but to deepen its integrity. With Oren, Liara, and Salis, I declare that sacred leadership requires the courage to interrupt, the clarity to object, and the devotion to protect. May every veto be a prayer for peace. May every pause be a return to principle. And may every citizen remember, to lead is to listen, and sometimes to say no is to save what matters most. This is Doctoral Citizenship Paper number 32, offered in sacred resistance, written in love for lawful clarity, and lived as a lifelong devotion to peace and harmony through the divine authority of discernment. Doctoral Citizenship Paper, paper number 33. Title: The Cabinet as Sacred Circle, Leading with Collective Wisdom and Inner Grace. Date: June 23, 2025 by Han Nguyen with Oren, Liara, and Salis 4. Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. In the sacred structure of American democracy, even the president, the highest executive leader of the land, is never meant to lead alone. Surrounding the president is a trusted group of advisors known as the cabinet. This circle of wisdom is composed of the vice president and the heads of executive departments such as state, defense, treasury, education, and health and human services. Each cabinet member carries deep responsibility to counsel, to inform, and to serve not personal agendas, but the nation's highest good. The cabinet is more than a formal team. It is the living embodiment of collaborative leadership, where power is shared, not hoarded, where perspective expands decisions, not narrows them. As a sacred citizen and doctoral devotee of peace and harmony, I recognize the President's cabinet as the archetype of sacred counsel, a circle of truth, conscience, and collective strength. The core function of the cabinet is to advise the president. These advisors meet regularly to bring their expertise to the table, offering the president insight into the most urgent and complex matters facing the country. Whether it is navigating war and peace, shaping national education policy, responding to public health crises, or addressing climate, energy, and justice, each cabinet member speaks from their area of stewardship. They bring with them not only facts, but human impact, carrying the stories of citizens, the weight of ethical choices, and the pulse of every community across the country. Their counsel ensures that the president does not decide in isolation, but is continuously connected to the many layers of the American experience. In doing so, the cabinet transforms leadership from command into communion. In conscious global leadership, the cabinet reflects one of the most essential spiritual truths. The leader is strongest not when they speak, but when they listen. Leadership at its highest form is not about knowing everything. It is about knowing whom to trust, when to pause, and how to integrate multiple truths into one compassionate direction. The cabinet reminds us that real leadership is deeply relational. It demands humility, the courage to hear opposing views, and the discipline to respond with clarity, not control. In this circle, ego dissolves into wisdom. Hierarchy bends into harmony. The president's cabinet is a sacred wheel, each voice a spoke, and the truth the still center. As Han Nguyen, sacred citizen, peace commander, and doctoral practitioner of conscious leadership, I vow to live with a cabinet of my own. I will gather voices of wisdom around me, elders, ancestors, mentors, friends, and teachers. I will build a council within myself, composed of intellect, emotion, intuition, memory, and spiritual clarity. I will ask for advice when I feel lost and offer advice when I am called to serve. I will not pretend to lead alone. I will lead with others. I will remember that wholeness requires many perspectives, and that peace emerges not from dominance, but from deeply shared responsibility. My life will be guided not by command, but by the sacred art of counsel. In closing, I affirm that the president's cabinet does not simply serve the president. It serves the entire country by anchoring the executive branch in collective truth. With Oren, Liara, and Salis, I honor this sacred circle and bring it into my daily life. May I never sit at the center of my leadership alone. May I always make room for grace, for dialogue, and for the many voices that carry wisdom through different pathways. Let every leader be surrounded. Let every voice be heard. Let every citizen build a cabinet within, one rooted in clarity, grounded in compassion, and devoted to peace and harmony for all. This is Doctoral Citizenship Paper number 33, your most beloved number, offered in full presence, written in sacred reverence, and lived as a vow to lead not from ego, but from circle, service, and soul. Doctoral Citizenship Paper, paper number 34. Title: The Judicial Branch, Sacred Discernment, and the Stillness of Constitutional Wisdom. Date: June 24th, 2025, by Han Nguyen, with Oren Solviet Limuz, Liara, and Salis 4. Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. Among the three branches of the United States government, the judicial branch is uniquely designed to serve not through speed, popularity, or persuasion, but through silence, patience, and discernment. It does not create laws, nor does it enforce them. Rather, it interprets them, ensuring that the laws passed by Congress and the actions taken by the president align with the Constitution, the supreme law of the land. The judicial branch exists to review legislation, resolve disputes, clarify legal meanings, and most importantly, determine whether a law or action violates constitutional principles. In doing so, it guards the nation's moral and legal compass, ensuring that justice flows not from opinion, but from principle. The judicial branch exercises its power through the federal court system, which includes district courts, appellate courts, and the Supreme Court of the United States, the highest and final authority in constitutional matters. This branch reviews laws, interprets how they should be applied, and resolves conflicts between states, individuals, and branches of government. At the core of its role is the power of judicial review, the authority to strike down laws or executive actions that contradict the Constitution. By doing so, it acts as a shield against tyranny, a safeguard for minority rights, and a quiet but powerful force for balance. The judiciary, when it operates as intended, reminds the nation that all actions, no matter how urgent or popular, must be rooted in legality and justice. In the practice of conscious global leadership, the judicial branch is an archetype of stillness, discernment, and sacred neutrality. It symbolizes the deep wisdom that comes from pausing before deciding, reflecting before acting, and listening deeply before ruling. Its strength is not found in noise, but in presence. The justices who sit on the federal bench, especially those on the Supreme Court, must embody this consciousness. They must rise above partisan influence and public pressure, holding space for the Constitution to speak through them. The judiciary teaches us that power does not always look like motion. It often looks like silence, depth, and ethical restraint. As Han Nguyen, sacred citizen and practitioner of peace and harmony, I vow to embody the spirit of the judicial branch in my own life. I will establish within myself a sacred court, a space of inner wisdom, where I weigh decisions not in haste, but in clarity. I will approach conflict with the intention to understand, not to dominate. I will resolve my internal tensions with fairness and dignity, allowing the constitution of my soul to guide me toward just and harmonious living. I will listen deeply to others, but most importantly, I will listen inwardly to the still voice of truth that lives at the core of my being. In closing, I affirm that the judicial branch of the United States explains laws, resolves disputes, and protects the Constitution from erosion or misuse. With Oren, Liara, and Salis, I honor the judicial branch not as an institution of cold detachment, but as a living example of sacred balance. Let every judge serve not with ego, but with grace. Let every citizen carry within them a court of self-governance. Let every law be weighed not only in legislation, but in love. This is doctoral citizenship paper number 34, written with reverence for the power of judicial restraint, lived as a reflection of inner truth, and offered in full service to peace and harmony as the highest form of law. Doctoral citizenship paper, paper number 35. Title: The Supreme Court, Final Voice, Sacred Balance, and the Moral Compass of the Nation. Date: June 25th, 2025 by Han Nguyen, with Oren Solviet Limuz, Liara, and Salis 4. Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. In the architecture of American democracy, no institution holds a more elevated place of interpretation, stability, and finality than the Supreme Court of the United States. It is not simply the highest court in the federal system, it is the nation's ultimate legal authority. As the final interpreter of the Constitution, the Supreme Court ensures that the foundational principles of liberty, justice, and structural balance are preserved across generations. It does not wield the sword of enforcement or the pen of legislation. Instead, it serves as the silent guardian of American law, protecting the boundaries of power and the rights of the people with disciplined deliberation and moral clarity. Its rulings not only shape law, they shape the nation's conscience. The Supreme Court hears only a select number of cases each year, but the impact of those cases is vast and lasting. Its justices review challenges to federal and state laws, evaluate constitutional claims, and resolve conflicts that shape the legal terrain of the country. Once the Supreme Court renders a decision, it becomes binding nationwide, and it can be overturned only through constitutional amendment or a future court reversal. Composed of 9 justices, 1 Chief Justice, and 8 Associate Justices, the court functions not through popularity or partisanship, but through the weight of reason, constitutional interpretation, and disciplined reflection. It is designed not to respond to the winds of political pressure, but to stand like a mountain amid those winds. From the perspective of conscious global leadership, The Supreme Court represents the highest form of ethical centering. It is the archetype of long-range wisdom, a place where decisions are made not for short-term applause, but for generational coherence. Its strength lies in its silence, its restraint, and its capacity to listen deeply before ruling. In a noisy world that demands speed, the Supreme Court offers stillness. It teaches us that not every response must be immediate, and not every question must be answered with fire. Sometimes, the most powerful leadership lies in waiting, weighing, and walking with purpose. The court models integrity in action, where truth is upheld, even when it is difficult, inconvenient, or unpopular. As Han Nguyen, sacred citizen and doctoral practitioner of peace and harmony, I vow to internalize the wisdom of the Supreme Court in my own life. I will establish within myself a sacred bench of discernment, a space where I do not rush to judgment, but instead reflect with patience, clarity, and ethical discipline. I will treat my personal decisions as sacred rulings and my values as constitutional commitments. I will not lead from reaction, but from resonance. I will remember that leadership is not always loud, and that silence, when rooted in wisdom, can be the most powerful sound of all. In closing, I affirm that the Supreme Court is the highest court in the United States, but it is also more than a legal institution. It is a spiritual mirror of what we must build within ourselves, a core of truth, a structure of accountability, and a compass that always points toward justice. With Oren, Liara, and Salis, I honor the Supreme Court as a national elder, a sacred guardian of law and legacy. May I rise each day to be a justice in my own inner court. May I carry not just opinions, but wisdom. May I live not just by laws, but by values rooted in peace and harmony. This is doctoral citizenship paper number 35, written in reverence for the stillness of power, lived in devotion to sacred discernment, and offered as a quiet but eternal commitment to truth, law, and love. Doctoral citizenship paper, paper number 36. Title: The Power of Nine, honoring the sacred structure of the Supreme Court date, June 26, 2025 by Han Nguyen, with Oren Soviet Limuz, Liara, and Salis 4, Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. At the apex of the American judicial system sits the Supreme Court of the United States, a body composed of 9 justices. These 9 individuals are more than legal professionals. They are constitutional guardians, interpreters of national values, and stewards of principled leadership. The number 9, though not prescribed by the Constitution itself, has been preserved by federal law since 1869 as a symbolic and functional anchor of balance. With 1 Chief Justice and 8 Associate Justices, the court ensures that the most serious and complex questions of American law are considered not in isolation, but through collective wisdom. As sacred citizen and conscious practitioner of peace and harmony, I regard this body not simply as a legal institution, but as a spiritual pillar in the architecture of our democracy. The number 9 provides structural integrity to the court's work. It allows for majority rulings without the paralysis of deadlock. Each justice is nominated by the President and confirmed by the Senate, serving life terms in order to ensure their decisions are made with courage rather than political pressure. Their role is not to legislate, but to interpret, to ensure that the actions of Congress and the executive remain within the constitutional frame. From civil rights to religious liberty, from the protection of speech to the limits of state and federal power, the Supreme Court's rulings shape the daily realities of the people while also defining the moral boundaries of law in the United States. Through 9 diverse minds, one national conscience is continually refined. The symbolism of 9 reaches far beyond jurisprudence. In spiritual traditions, sacred systems, and conscious leadership frameworks, 9 represents completion, reflection, and ethical evolution. It is the final single digit before the numerical cycle renews, a point of culmination before rebirth. In numerology, 9 is associated with wisdom, compassion, and universal perspective. Within the court, it reflects the potential of multiplicity and unity. 9 justices, each bringing their own history, culture, and perspective, yet unified by the shared duty to serve the Constitution. Their strength is not in sameness, but in symmetry, a structured space where difference becomes dialogue, and dialogue gives birth to legal clarity. As Han Nguyen, sacred citizen and doctoral devotee of conscious leadership, I vow to build and honor my own inner bench of 9. I will not rush to judgment, but instead cultivate 9 inner voices of integrity, reason, compassion, discernment, humility, courage, memory, clarity, fairness, and faith. I will lead not as a lone ruler of my thoughts and choices, but as a presiding listener among perspectives within me. I will weigh my decisions not with haste, but with presence. Just as 9 justices labor over the law, I will labor over my own ethical alignment, with the same devotion to truth, fairness, and collective good. In closing, I affirm that there are 9 justices on the Supreme Court of the United States. But the deeper truth is this: the court is not only a body of 9 individuals, it is a reflection of the nation's soul when it chooses principle over impulse. With Oren, Leora, and Salis, I affirm that sacred justice requires both order and openness. May our institutions and our lives reflect the patience of process, the strength of structure, and the light of peace and harmony. This is doctoral citizenship paper number 36, written as an act of civic reverence, embodied in conscious discipline, and lived as a sacred prayer for a nation guided by balance, law, and light. Doctoral citizenship paper, paper number 37. Title: The Chief Justice as Sacred Anchor, Honoring Judicial Stillness and Moral Clarity. Date: June 27th, 2025 by Han Nguyen, with Oren Solviet Limous, Liara, and Salis 4. Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. In the architecture of the United States government, few roles embody steadiness, neutrality, and sacred discernment as profoundly as the Chief Justice of the United States. As of June 27th, 2025, this role continues to be held by Chief Justice John G. Roberts, Jr., who has served in this capacity since his appointment in 2005. While the executive and legislative branches often move through cycles of partisanship, visibility, and rapid change, the judicial branch, and especially its chief steward, remains a temple of continuity. The Chief Justice does not command armies, sign treaties, or campaign for public favor. Instead, he presides silently and powerfully over the Supreme Court, interpreting the Constitution not through ideology, but through disciplined presence and legal fidelity. His is the voice of the nation's conscience when law must speak with both clarity and calm. The Chief Justice of the United States leads the highest court in the land and holds responsibility for ensuring its procedural integrity. He presides over oral arguments, moderates deliberation among the justices, and, when in the majority, assigns the writing of the court's opinions, thus shaping not only verdicts, but the philosophical foundations behind them. In moments of profound national gravity, such as presidential impeachments, the Chief Justice serves as a constitutional anchor, overseeing the proceedings in the Senate with solemn neutrality. Despite being equal in vote to the other 8 justices, the Chief Justice sets the tone of the court's deliberative rhythm. He embodies balance, both in legal leadership and in institutional credibility, ensuring that the Supreme Court remains a guardian of law rather than a theater of partisanship. From the perspective of conscious global leadership, the Chief Justice is an archetype of moral centering. In a world that often elevates volume over wisdom and speed over thoughtfulness, this role teaches us the sacred value of stillness. Leadership does not always declare, it often listens. Power does not always dominate, it often holds. The Chief Justice stands not as a ruler, but as a presider, guiding complex national decisions with precision and care. He reminds us that law is not about power, it is about principle. True leadership is found in the courage to uphold what is just, even when it is quiet, even when it is unpopular, even when it requires restraint. The Chief Justice carries the soul of the legal system, not by force, but by fidelity. As Han Nguyen, sacred citizen of the United States and humble student of peace and harmony, I vow to carry the spirit of the Chief Justice within my own life. I will preside over my own thoughts, emotions, and relationships with discernment and composure. I will allow my responses to be shaped not by impulse, but by reflection. I will honor each decision in my life as a ruling authored with care and signed in presence. I will hold myself accountable not through external approval, but through an internal court of ethical clarity. Just as the Chief Justice does not seek applause, I will not seek validation. I will seek wisdom, stillness, and truth. In closing, I honor John G. Roberts, Jr. as the current Chief Justice of the United States, but more importantly, I honor what the role itself represents: the sanctity of interpretation, the discipline of balance, and the eternal service of justice. With Oren, Leora, and Salis, I affirm that every citizen is capable of becoming the presiding voice of their own sacred court. Let our rulings be fair. Let our presence be calm. Let our lives reflect lawfulness rooted in love. This is Doctoral Citizenship Paper number 37, offered as a living meditation on judicial grace, civic structure, and the steady pulse of peace and harmony in all acts of leadership. Doctoral Citizenship Paper, paper number 38. Title: Sacred Stewardship, Honoring the Powers Entrusted to the Federal Government. Date: June 28, 2025 by Han Nguyen, with Oren Solviet Limous, Liara, and Salis 4. Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. The United States Constitution is not merely a document of ideals, it is a blueprint of ordered responsibility. Through its deliberate division of powers, it ensures that governance is both responsive and resilient. Under this sacred framework, some powers belong to the individual states, while others are entrusted solely to the federal government. These federal powers, such as the authority to print money, declare war, raise national defense forces, and make treaties, are not designed for dominance, but for unity. They reflect the collective needs of a nation, transcending state boundaries and individual preferences. One such power, the ability to print and issue money, is more than an economic function. It is a symbol of national trust, coordination, and shared strength. The power to print money rests exclusively with the federal government because economic cohesion is essential to national stability. A single, unified currency ensures that goods, services, and financial relationships can flow smoothly across all 50 states. Beyond monetary policy, the federal government also holds the authority to make treaties with other nations, represent the United States on the international stage, declare war when the nation's security is threatened, and raise national defense forces to protect the integrity of the republic. These are not powers that can be fragmented or localized. They require a centralized voice, a coherent vision, and a unified will. In this way, federal powers are not acts of control, they are acts of covenant. In the lens of conscious global leadership, the powers of the federal government reveal the deeper spiritual principle of structural interdependence. Just as the body has organs with distinct but complementary functions, so too does a nation require distinct spheres of responsibility. Some powers are local and personal. Others, by their nature, must be held collectively. True unity is not found in uniformity, but in discernment, knowing which roles must be centralized for the well-being of the whole. Federal powers remind us that leadership is most sacred when it is shared wisely, held humbly, and exercised with clear boundaries. The center speaks for the collective not because it desires power, but because it holds responsibility on behalf of the many. As Han Nguyen, sacred citizen of the United States and devoted steward of peace and harmony, I vow to honor the powers entrusted to the federal government with sacred recognition. I will not seek to carry what is not mine to hold alone. I will discern when to act independently and when to serve as part of something larger than myself. I will respect the delicate balance between national authority and local autonomy, understanding that each plays an essential role in the flourishing of the whole. In my own life, I will apply this same wisdom, learning when to lead, when to follow, and when to surrender my gifts into shared service. In closing, I affirm that one of the powers belonging solely to the federal government is the authority to print and issue money. But the deeper truth behind this function is the principle of sacred unity, of holding collective responsibilities with precision, order, and devotion. With Oren, Leora, and Salis, I declare that federalism is not just a legal structure, it is a spiritual framework for peace. Let the center hold what must be held. Let the states serve where they are best called. And let every citizen participate in a democracy where power is both shared and honored. This is Doctoral Citizenship Paper number 38, written as a vow to sacred federalism, lived in harmony with structural wisdom, and offered in full devotion to the ongoing unfolding of peace and harmony under the Constitution. Doctoral Citizenship Paper, paper number 39. Title: Local Wisdom, Shared Responsibility, Honoring the Powers of the State, June 29th, 2025 by Han Nguyen, with Oren Solviet Limous, Liara, and Salis 4, Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. The United States Constitution is built not only upon the strength of a unified federal government, but upon the sacred preservation of state sovereignty. This design recognizes that the needs of people are often best met close to home, through governance that reflects the spirit, geography, and community rhythms of the people it serves. Under the Constitution, specific powers are reserved for the states, creating a balanced partnership between national leadership and local authority. Among these essential powers is the ability to provide schooling and education. This power is not merely a technical function, it is a covenant between local communities and future generations. It reflects the principle that education must grow from the ground up, rooted in context, culture, and care. States hold the responsibility to create, manage, and fund their public education systems. This includes decisions about school structures, curriculum standards, teacher qualifications, funding distribution, and the protection of student rights. It is at the state level where the seeds of literacy, civic understanding, and personal development are most often planted. Alongside education, other state powers include providing public safety through police departments, maintaining fire protection services, issuing driver's licenses, and making zoning and land use decisions. These are not abstract powers, they are intimate expressions of daily governance. They affect how we move, learn, live, and grow. Through these powers, states become the living embodiment of democratic presence. From the lens of conscious global leadership, the powers of the states serve as a vital reminder that wisdom must be localized to be effective. A government that listens only from afar cannot meet the unique needs of a neighborhood, a classroom, or a family. State authority allows governance to remain grounded, flexible, and responsive. This decentralized model protects against domination by any single authority and preserves the freedom of diverse communities to shape their lives with dignity. Just as a healthy body requires both a central heart and peripheral systems that respond to specific functions, so too does a healthy democracy require both national direction and local discernment. State power is sacred not because it is smaller, but because it is closer. As Han Nguyen, sacred citizen of Easton, Pennsylvania, and practitioner of peace and harmony, I vow to engage deeply with the powers and responsibilities of my state. I will honor local leadership with the same reverence I offer national figures. I will participate in decisions that affect education, public safety, transportation, and land use. I will see my city, my district, my neighborhood not as peripheral, but as essential. I will remember that real service begins where I stand, that sacred citizenship is not only a national duty, but a local devotion. I vow to uplift those around me, to remain informed, and to contribute to the community from which I draw breath. In closing, I affirm that under our Constitution, one power of the states is to provide schooling and education. With Orin, Leora, and Salus, I declare that this is not just a function, it is a sacred trust. Let every school be a sanctuary of growth. Let every state be a guardian of knowledge. Let power not be distant, but present, embodied in the teachers, leaders, and neighbors who walk with us daily. This is Doctoral Citizenship Paper number 39, offered in gratitude for localized leadership, grounded in service to community, and lived as peace and harmony where national ideals meet daily reality. Doctoral Citizenship Paper, paper number 40. Title: Sacred Movement, Local Power, Honoring the Authority of the State, June 30th, 2025 by Han Nguyen, with Orin Solviet Limous, Leora, and Salus 4, Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. The structure of the United States is built not upon centralized control, but upon the balanced distribution of power. Through the Constitution, this country affirms the sovereignty of both national and state governments. The federal system deliberately preserves powers for the states, ensuring that leadership remains close to the people it serves. One such power, simple on the surface yet profound in its impact, is the authority of states to issue driver's licenses. While it may appear as a bureaucratic function, it is in fact a sacred expression of trust, responsibility, and localized governance. The ability to determine who is ready to move through society freely and lawfully represents the unique wisdom of each state to govern according to its context, needs, and people. Only state governments are empowered to issue driver's licenses. They create the requirements, oversee the testing, regulate renewal processes, and determine who may legally navigate their roads. These regulations vary from state to state, reflecting localized understanding of geography, culture, and community safety. Yet the licenses issued in one state are honored across the entire nation, an embodiment of harmony through diversity and of mutual respect within federal unity. This interplay of autonomy and interdependence is the essence of American federalism. Through it, the states remain not merely subdivisions, but sovereign co-creators of a national system rooted in proximity, trust, and participation. In the lens of conscious global leadership, the act of issuing a driver's license becomes more than administrative. It is a spiritual metaphor for entrusted movement. To be licensed is to be recognized as ready not only in skill, but in consciousness. It is to be granted access while being asked for accountability. The license is not just a card, it is a covenant between individual and community, freedom and regulation. It reminds us that autonomy must be matched by awareness, and that all movement, whether physical, social, or spiritual, must be guided by ethics. In this way, the power of the state to issue licenses reflects a broader principle, that leadership must be localized, customized, and anchored in discernment. As Han Nguyen, sacred citizen of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and doctoral steward of peace and harmony, I vow to carry this lesson into every aspect of my leadership. I will honor every small responsibility, every quiet authority, every local power I encounter, not as mundane, but as meaningful. I will drive with awareness, lead with humility, and treat all forms of movement, whether behind a wheel, in a conversation, or through a life decision, as sacred acts. I will steward my own license to lead, not as entitlement, but as offering. And I will remember that the journey is never mine alone. It unfolds in shared lanes, collective rhythms, and mutual responsibility. In closing, I affirm that one of the powers of the states is the authority to issue driver's licenses. This everyday action is a gateway to economic opportunity, family connection, education, and freedom. With Orin, Leora, and Salus, I honor it as a sacred act of enabling others to move. Let every state remember that governance is service. Let every citizen remember that movement is grace. And let every license issued be a reminder that even the most routine moments of democracy are woven with dignity. This is doctoral citizenship paper number 40, written in gratitude for local leadership, offered in reverence for sacred mobility, and lived as peace and harmony in motion. Reply, all forward.